All right. Okay, so kicking off with a poll, I'm going to launch this here now. And we want to know, does your facility have more than 3 staff members that are new to dialysis in the last year? I'm going to give this about 30 seconds. All right, about 5 more seconds. Does your facility have more than 3 staff members that are new to dialysis in the last year? All right, I'm going to end that. Is everyone able to see these results? This is what we're working with right now. 57% of you say yes. 43% say no.
Yeah, we do see the rating.
Awesome. All right. Another one here before we get started in the presentation. Are you implementing the strategic plan that you developed for modalities and or hospitalizations at your facility? Let me pull that up. All right, I'll give you about 30 seconds here. All right, last call. All right. So awesome. We have 95% of the facilities in this call today are implementing the plan. So that is great news. Stop sharing this. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth for just a bit. She is going to go over some best practices. She's got some pictures to share of things that she uncovered in her one-to-ones on home therapy and transplant.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thank you all for participating in the polling questions. So the first one about staffing was something that we wanted to know because it leads in pretty nicely to one of the best practices that we heard about in talking to clinics, particularly about home dialysis and transplant. So I do want to jump down to about halfway down the screen in the best practices for home dialysis, and it talks about educating PCTs on home modality options. And this is something that came up several times. We had, I believe it was 57% of the people on this call have more than 3 staff members who are new within the last year. There are lots of new staff members that we've heard about who are brand new just to dialysis in general. And one of the things that came up was how important it was to prioritize educating the staff so that the people who have the most face time with the patients are able to give, at the very least, a base level general answer to patients' questions as they come up when it comes to home dialysis. And particularly the PCTs, we know that they are the ones who have probably the most face time with patients, and giving them some sort of a base level of knowledge of what the options are and what they look like can be a great best practice in communicating some confidence to patients in their ability to do these things. One of the facilities that I talked to actually assigned all of their new staff as the people who would be doing a lot of education for patients. And that was a way to give them some ownership of that information. Going back up to the top of the screen, another thing we heard was, or that we talked about a lot, was discussing home modalities as step one in their journey of kidney disease. For better or for worse, these patients now have this kidney disease for the rest of their life, and that is going to look different as their life goes on. But we want to help them structure it so that what is important to them in life is what is able to work out as it relates to their kidney disease. I've compared it to assisted living facilities. Typically, someone doesn't enter into an assisted living facility and go straight to the nursing home where they are getting all of their care done by nurses and all of their medication provided. You enter in and you live independently and you do what you can for yourself to begin with. And gradually over time, you get more and more help as it's needed. And framing home dialysis as this, where you come in and you keep what you are able to do for yourself, and that is a gradual step, and eventually you may end up in center. That's a helpful way to help patients see a little bit more long-term perspective with their journey with kidney disease. Next is having a display of stored PD supplies in the lobby. This was a really creative solution. You might even consider having a half order of supplies if storage space is a particular challenge for those within your facility. This just gives them a really clear visual of what they want to consider when they're thinking about home dialysis, as well as thinking about different ways that they could store those things. Having a bulletin board with home dialysis information, and then this was the really critical piece, and I'll have a picture later to show you how this was used in a clinic. Not only did they have the bulletin board, and they left it up for, I think, about a month, they then came through and did a facility-wide game where they played almost a Wheel of Fortune style game that asked questions that had been found on that bulletin board. And it sounded like a really great low stakes way to address some information in a facility that had dealt with a lot of misinformation when it came to home dialysis. Next is following up one-on-one with patients to review any written or visual education provided. We know that everybody has a different learning style, whether it's auditory or visual or tactile. And we also have staff going all over the place to cover multiple clinics. And so probably more than used to be the case, patients are getting their information about home dialysis through videos or written education, and those can be great things. But the most impact that we heard about was having somebody, and it can be those PCTs or nurses or clinical staff who you've done some education for, having them follow up one-on-one with that patient so that the education they're getting isn't just that video or that handout. Next is considering if patients can be candidates for solo PD. We have heard at some facilities that patients are very interested, but they don't have a care partner. And I think we all know that this isn't a good fit for everyone, but in some cases it can be a solution. And talking to the nephrologist about that as an option can be a good way to go. Working with all or most new patients on gradually doing more self-care during their in-center treatments. When patients are new, if they come into the unit and what they know of dialysis is that gradually they're going to be learning and expected to take care of their own treatment process, that really paves a way for them to have confidence in themselves to be able to do home dialysis. Next slide. So this is the game board that I was talking about. US Renal Care, Oxon Hill created an educational bulletin board. And I do believe that what is written on this wheel wasn't unique to home dialysis. It was focused on something else. And they left the bulletin board up for about a month, and then they played a game that tested the patient's knowledge about the things that had been provided and talked about on that bulletin board. What was really nice is this looks like it is something that can be cleaned between each patient use. And so we're addressing that through an infection control route, but it also just seemed like a fun way to provide information in a different way. Next slide. So best practices for transplant. First off was just having a clear platform to keep track of all of the patients and their progress from the time they express interest or lack of interest all the way through receiving the transplant. And this can look different. It can be a binder. It can be an Excel sheet, a Google Doc, or some sort of platform that your company provides, but making sure that there is some way to keep track of it, particularly in light of the fact that staff members are covering multiple units, and this can kind of get lost in the shuffle of things. That was one of the most important things. Establishing a clear workflow for addressing patients who are made inactive. And this is going to vary depending on which transplant centers you are working with the most, but spend the time to make sure that everyone on your team knows what the process is. How do you get the information that tells you that a patient has been made inactive? Does this come through an email, a fax, the T-Rex system, or some other electronic medical record? Make sure everybody is aware of that. And then make sure there's a clear process for who is in charge of taking that information and following up with the transplant center to figure out why they were made inactive and what is going to be necessary to move them back towards that active status. And then put a date on that. What are the steps that are needed? Who are going to follow up on that steps? When are the dates that these things will happen? Next is very similar to what we talked in home dialysis, educating all of the staff about the process of transplant. This can be confusing, it can be a long process, and particularly taking the time to educate nurses, PCTs about this process can go a long way when the people that are most often speaking with and having FaceTime with patients are able to encourage them, to educate them, or just to be able to go, I know this takes a long time. It sounds like I'm looking at our tracking sheet here, and the next step for you is this. Don't get overwhelmed by this process. Let's just focus on this next step. Next is hosting a transplant lobby day. I think most of us probably know about that. But one thing that seemed to have made a lot of difference in some of the units that we talked to is having the transplant staff come onto the floor and speak individually with the patients. It just seemed to provide quite a bit more detailed information for them that resulted in patients following through on their evaluation process and referrals. Next has to do with longer wait times that we've heard about for transplant centers. So sometimes you have a 4 to 6 or longer wait time, even to have a patient get in to be evaluated. And while we would love to be able to chip away at that and improve on that, what can we do in the meantime while that is the reality? We know that patients are going to be required to do certain screenings and tests no matter what happens as a part of the workup process. So can we go ahead and get them scheduled for some of those things while they're waiting? They're going to need a colonoscopy. They're going to need some of those other routine screenings, and those things can take a long time as well. So let's focus our efforts in the meantime on getting those things scheduled. Next, and this kind of goes along the same path, is thinking about living donation. Again, transplant can be a long process. So while they are waiting, either to be evaluated or they are already listed and they're just waiting to hear about a transplant, maybe we focus our efforts on living donation. Certainly, if there is an immediate family member, extended family member, friend who is willing to donate, that's wonderful. And let's follow through on that. But if not, what are some other ways that we can get the patient's story out? Does that look like sharing at a church group, at a community group, doing a social media post, having some sort of online platform that does not directly ask for the living donation, but gets their story out there to increase the likelihood that they may receive a living donation? And then lastly is always having a patient who has received a transplant come in and talk to other patients. This seems to be one of the most impactful efforts that we can make. Next. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Caitlin to talk about best practices for hospitalizations.
Awesome. So hospitalizations, there was a lot of really good stuff that was shared during the one-to-ones. And then a lot of this stuff I also pulled from some of the strategic plans that were sent to me, because I did comb through those, every single one that was sent, and tried to incorporate as much as I could into this presentation today. These are some things that really stood out to me that I thought were great ideas. First of all, working with local pharmacies, and then another facility is working directly with their VA to develop blister packs of medications to make it easier for patients to stay on top of them and keep them. So instead of a patient trying to keep up with 13 different pill bottles and what do you take at what time, you can contact your pharmacy, contact the VA. I know the VA has a specific pharmacy program for this, I believe, to have them all organized in a blister pack where they pop out the AM pills, they pop out the PM pills. So something to take into consideration there. A facility is adding quarterly A1Cs to their patient labs to monitor the status of their diabetes, and then refer those patients to endocrinology as needed if they're not already linked up with an endocrinologist. Visual aids, and I have a picture of this on a slide of cup sizes for patients to understand fluid management, because it's even difficult for me to sometimes visualize what is 8 ounces, what is 16 ounces. So they actually color coordinated some fluid. They have it out in their lobby, and it really shows them, how much is 8 ounces, how much is 6 ounces or a liter or whatever. So just a lot of visuals for patients. An idea that I think I shared with almost every facility that I talked to in one-to-ones were these mouth spray bottles. So I had a facility share that they went out and bought these little 3-ounce spray bottles. And they worked with the patient at the chair side when they came in for their treatment. They filled them with water, and then they had different flavor extracts, and they let the patient choose which flavor they wanted. They mixed it into the spray bottle. And instead of, when the patient is thirsty, having them, the patient's like, oh, I'm thirsty, I'm going to go, down a bottle of water. They're encouraged to use their spray bottle, put a little spritz in there, help with the dry mouth, help curb some of the thirst. So it will hopefully avoid them going into fluid overload, taking in too much fluid. So love that idea. Patients with hypertension, a facility is having them bring in their home blood pressure machines if they have one once a month, so that the clinic can compare the results that they're getting at home on their machine with the machines that they have in dialysis, which makes a lot of sense. And she said they came up with that idea because patients would say, well, I check my blood pressure at home and it's fine. And then they come into dialysis and their blood pressure is, 260 over 130. Obviously it's not fine. So they thought, well, maybe their machine is not calibrated. So once a month they bring in their machines and they compare to make sure they're getting accurate results at home. Providing patients with drinking bottles that have measurements so they can better track their fluid intake. I see these a lot on Amazon. I know some of this stuff is depending on your budget and how much the facility can spend. But those fluid tracking bottles are relatively inexpensive and potentially a good thing if you were going to do a gift basket or a raffle with patients, something to include in there. Commitment plans. So having their patients sign a commitment to attend treatment, and then each month they're recognized on this commitment board that they have displayed in the lobby or in the treatment area, and it demonstrates their success and how many treatments they've attended. So something to get patients a little motivated. Another thing that I have really been harping on is incorporating all of the patient and family engagement activities into every aspect of their care. And Renee will go into this on the slides coming up, all of the different PFE things that can be incorporated, but specifically just addressing the patient goals and helping patients define what quality of life means to them. We do have some facilities that have some very critical patients, and they are revisiting those conversations with patients. You know, what do you define as a good quality of life? Is this really what you want? Having those tough conversations, and of course, bringing the doctors in on these conversations. It doesn't mean that you're going to patients and, you know, everyone is going to be a DNR. You know, you don't have a good quality of life. Oh, let's just make you a DNR. That's absolutely not it. That's absolutely not what that means. It's just really getting into the nitty gritty of what do they want out of this and what do they think dialysis is actually providing for them. We have a facility with critical patients that are working on, they're distributing palliative care resources to some patients as they start those tough conversations with them. Another facility who is helping their diabetic patients obtain blood glucose monitors. I know facilities around where I live, the endocrinologists where I live, they often distribute a blood glucose monitor when those patients are diagnosed with diabetes, but not all facilities do that. And so this facility is recognizing a need that these diabetic patients still do not have access to check their blood sugars at home, which is a huge problem. So they're going through the steps of helping identify those patients and how to get them glucose monitors so they can keep a better eye on their sugars at home. And then kind of going back to the staffing thing, re-educating all staff members on how to handle when a patient calls in and says they're not coming for treatment. So patient calls in, hey, I'm not coming to treatment today. Maybe it's a new staff member. Okay, thanks for letting us know, hang up the phone. But really doing some education with all staff members, new and current, on how to handle those calls. So patient calls, hey, I'm not coming to treatment today. And instead of just saying, thanks for letting me know, okay, how come you're not coming in today? What's going on? How can I help you? Do you need to go to an urgent care? You know, what's going on? Can we reschedule you for another time today or another day of the week? So just really trying to focus on how they handle those phone calls is huge. Couple pictures to share. This is FMC Elkton shared these pictures with me, and I really like this. This is their visual on fluid intake. So they have a little setup in their lobby, go, slow, whoa. So go is in green. This is an adequate or an okay amount of fluid intake. Slow, whoa, slow down. This is getting to be a little bit too much. And whoa, this is too much fluid. And they have different cup sizes. They have them labeled. Patients can go and look at them and get an idea to help them better understand how much fluid they're taking in. FMC Elkton also has a little whiteboard that they put up for the new year, asking patients what their goals are, kind of just triggering them to be thinking about those things as they head into the new year. And then this is also FMC Elkton. They launched a project for specifically to target mistreatments, and it's called A Fish Out of Water is a Fish in Distress. This is the little bulletin board, little trifold board that they put up at their clinic. And so prior to starting the project, the team explained to the patients the concept of this fishbowl game. Patients are educated on the importance of not missing treatments and staying out of the hospital. Participating patients are given a number to identify them. So you can see on this board, each of these little fish has a number, and the patient will know which number they are. They can tell if they're in the fishbowl or if they're getting out of the fishbowl. The The patients are educated that they need to keep their fish in the fish bowl to keep them alive and healthy. Each week, the poster board is updated. The patient's fish will start inside of the fish bowl. If they miss a treatment, the fish will immediately come out of the water and begin to experience distress. When the fish comes out of the water, they can begin to experience shortness of breath, heart failure, fluid overload, confusion, lethargy. It's illustrated by using the little excerpt bubbles. So over here to the left of the fish bowl, so the patient's number, whatever they're experiencing because of a mistreatment, they'll kind of put that around where these little bubbles are. If the patient doesn't miss any treatments, they automatically receive 2 entries for that week to have their name entered into a raffle at the end of each month, and they get a prize. If the patient misses 1 treatment for the week, they will only receive 1 entry for that week. And if 2 or more treatments are missed, they will forfeit their entries for that week and start fresh the following week. And then at the end of the month, all entries are placed in a jar and they go into a raffle for a prize. So this is an excellent visual. I love that they gave the patients each a number identifier so they can go in, see where they're at. Are they still in the fishbowl? Are they coming out of the fishbowl? So I really, really loved this. And if FMC, I don't know if FMC Elkton, if anyone from the facilities on the call today, but when we get to the end or during the Q&A session, I would love to hear how this is going and how the patients like this. Okay, and I'm gonna flip things over to Renee now and let her go over the PFE best practices.
All right. So there are 3 focuses for the patient and family engagement. And the first one is QAPI. And right off the bat, I think my most favorite strategy that a facility took was this first bullet, where they just went around right at the beginning when they were ready to start a QAPI meeting, just went around the treatment floor and told everybody they were getting ready to go in the meeting, and was anybody there interested in participating, and then just had them call in right then and there while they were still being dialyzed. So that was a way for them to get as many patients as were interested there, but certainly increase their chances of having 1 patient attend. And it's convenient for them to not have to stay, not have to come on a day that's not good for them. So, you know, they're right there. They're not really probably doing much else, but a great opportunity to include patients. Another great strategy has been inviting patients with backgrounds that are like work backgrounds or whatever, that are familiar with the idea of goal setting and looking at metrics, things like teaching, healthcare, and businesses. These are great backgrounds for patients who can probably already come without much orientation and be able to understand what it is you're trying to do in QAPI. And then another thing to get around patients that, you know, aren't, that you're not having success involving, but to practice in the meeting as if you had a patient present, so that you're prepared when you do have a patient attend, that you're not, that you have a good way of not talking about patient level stuff. And obviously another strategy for that would be to separate your meeting so that when the patient is there, you're talking only about the metrics overall, and then move into an executive session, excuse the patient when you want to drill down to patient level. Another great thing is to QAPI your QAPI. So in QAPI, talking about how to involve patients in this process, what that's going to look like, how to target patients to be a part of that, what kind of options can you provide the patient to encourage their participation, you know, meaning that, you know, some patients don't want to stay because they've got a ride, you know, or they don't want to come in another day. The patients do not have to be physically present at the table. They can call in, they can do telecommute. So, so those are great options still. taking time to explain what the data means. So sometimes we have patients that aren't as familiar with these types of activities. And so upfront, just kind of, talking about, all right, now we're going to discuss this particular measure. And, this is the rate we're at, this is where we want to be, and this is why. And this is why this measure is important and why we look at this. Just a way to kind of orient the patient very quickly regarding what's going on. And then being flexible. If, some patients aren't going to be able to participate the entire meeting. So, if that is an opportunity to include them, they don't have to be there for your entire meeting, right? We can pick 1 or 2 or 3 things, or even provide the patient with a list. These are the topics we're going to be talking about. Are any of these of particular interest to you? And then just focusing on those while the patient has the time. Certainly swapping different patients, getting as many patients involved as you can reduces any perceived burden to this, so that the patients, can alternate and maybe come once a quarter or once every other month, whatever. I know that this particular way of involving patients in care is very challenging for facilities. It's uncomfortable, I think, for a lot of folks. Initially, I think once you do it, most facilities have been really very pleased with having that patient input. But if you have staff that are skeptical or resistant to having patients at the table, try to include them in determining who they would pick to involve in the meeting, kind of allowing them to help decide which patient would be or which patients would be, in their opinion, easier to work with in this respect. And then patients who have a low census, or maybe patients who have more challenges in participating, such as like you may have some high acuity patients, or just, patients in your entire facility just is not interested. A way to engage patients in this process, maybe to pique their interest more, select your top 3 issues, measures that you want to work on, and post those on a bulletin board, and tell patients these are the things that we feel are most important. Are these as important to you? And these are the things that we're trying to work towards. These are the interventions we're thinking about. Do you all think that we're on the right track? Are there other suggestions you have? These are ways of engaging the patients in this process. And then finally, the medical director buy-in is very important. And if you have a medical director who is supportive of this process, I think that is a real gift. And any of your medical directors really should be encouraged to go out and invite patients personally to these meetings, so that those patients can have a better sense of the value that they can bring to the table, and might be more enticed to give it a try. So life planning, this is part of, I view this as a part of the conversation you have prior to going into care planning, during the reassessment conversation that you have with patients, that all IDT members are having with the patients. So this is a way of determining their values and preferences and priorities, and getting those identified as patient self-directed goals for the care plan. I believe most facilities are doing this. They just don't have the goals on the care plan, or they're not specifically identified as the patient's goal. So a few facilities are actually labeling the patient goals on the care plan as patient self-directed goal, and then putting the goal there. And then, the importance of having all the interdisciplinary team members listening for what's important to the patients and helping the patient to identify those things as goals. The more staff members we have that are helping to identify goals with patients, the better chances we have of having a patient getting a goal on a care plan. Use of SMART goals. That's a great tool to use, a great strategy to use with patients to help them create a goal that is achievable. And then, targeting your lead patients to just try some of the tools that we have, maybe even trying the SMART goal technique, giving that a whirl and providing feedback on its usefulness. And then also having patients provide feedback to other patients about their experience in participating in the care planning process and in participating in their goal development. With peer mentoring, I think some of the challenges have been getting patients to do the training and then getting them through the training, following up with the training. I'm assisting patients in that process. I have asked some facilities to assist with some of that, particularly patients who don't have access to the internet. Facilities have been very open and helpful with providing a laptop or an iPad so the patient could do the training during their treatment. Targeting patients, again, who are already leaders and mentors, maybe informally in the unit. Those are great people to have to go through the training to become a certified trainer, or excuse me, mentor. And some of the difficulty I think patients have had with wanting to do this program is the thought of the time commitment for going through the training. There are 6 modules. They have to complete only 4 of them. But just encouraging the patients to try the first module, see how it goes, see how long it took, how difficult or easy it was for them to get through. That way, they're not just dismissing it right off the bat, but if they just see how it goes for the first module, that might give them a better understanding of what's involved and encourage them to go further. Other patients, who've been transplanted, those are great people if you've got relationships with them still, to bring them into this peer mentoring process. They're perfect for talking to other patients about the transplant process, the workup, getting the surgery, what the benefits are for them. Again, same idea, partnering with a sister home program and having those patients become mentors who can then come back and speak with your in-center patients. Also, just, for facilities that have difficulty finding a mentor, identifying patients who could benefit from being paired with one. The network has a number of certified mentors that we can help pair with them, and facilities do get credit for that. So that's a great strategy. We've talked about lobby days. These are great opportunities to put mentors in front of patients to talk about various aspects of dialysis. As well as a great opportunity for staff lunch and learns, talking about patient perspectives. Pairing patients with coping issues with a mentor, the benefits of that is that they can form some friendships, and that is hugely motivating for adherence for both the mentors and the mentees, and great for decreasing anxiety. And then we also have facilities using the hard copy training materials for folks who may have difficulty with the technology, reading that on a computer. It has provided some assistance for folks with those challenges. Next slide.
Okay, back to a poll. I'm going to launch here. Okay, have you assisted patients in creating self-directed goals that are documented on their care plans? So there's a few options here. I'll give about 40 seconds. All right, a few more seconds. Okay. All right, so this is what we have. About 26% say yes, that were clearly documented on the plan as patient self-directed goals. Majority say that patient have goals, but they don't really stand out on the care plan as the patients. And then the last two are almost evenly distributed. All right. Have you identified a peer mentor? All right, a couple more seconds. Okay, so it looks like most facilities here haven't gotten a patient to agree yet. So I'm thinking Renee's suggestion on finding a mentee and then letting the network know, let Renee know, and then maybe she can hook them up with one of the network mentors may be a good option. So definitely have a few options there. And about 20% say yes, they have submitted the form to the network. Awesome. Okay, I've got another poll. Are you including patients in QAPI? I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer this. All right. So a lot of facilities, again, haven't had a patient to agree yet. And 17% say yes, it's the best thing ever. 15% say yes, it's awkward. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to look at some results and talk about some progress and highlight a few facilities, and then we'll answer some questions. I am really trying to stress to all of the facilities that I've spoke to over the last few months that we know that it's overwhelming when you get these goals from the network, oh, we need you to move 5 patients to home, or we need you to have 6 patients on the transplant wait list. And you see those numbers at first and you're like, oh my gosh, that's too much. How will I ever do that? And I try to reiterate that we just want to see some progress. So if that means that you move 1 patient, or you start a conversation with the patient about going to home and you start that process, we just want to see progress, and we're celebrating even those little wins, which turn into big wins. So we want to celebrate all of that. So for hospitalizations, we don't have a whole lot of data. We started this in October with this group that we have on the call now. So this is about 128 facilities total that Elizabeth and I divvied up, and Renee worked with as well. So the average rate of hospital use at the end of September, we saw some improvements. The average rate at the end of December. So hospital admissions was at 2.97. Again, this is looking at rates. And at the end of December, that had come down to 2.78. For ER visits, the rate was 2.03. And this was the most improvement. The rates at the end of December were 1.84. And again, this is not network wide. This is just rates within this cohort of facilities. Readmission stayed the same, which is okay. It did not go up, which is progress. And COVID admissions went down from 0.89 to a rate of 0.75. So some great progress there. I want Elizabeth to share her results so far for home and transplant.
Okay. So for transplant waitlisting goals, we had, out of the cohort 2 facilities, we had 77 patients who were added to the transplant waitlist, which is excellent. That equates to about 51 facilities who were in this project added at least one patient to the waitlist. For home modalities, 83 patients were moved to a home modality, or 52 facilities within this project who moved at least one patient. And then 37 patients from cohort 2 received a transplant between September and December. And just to sort of piggyback on what Caitlin was saying, that is just a snapshot of the time that we've been working together. So we still have another month of data, which can show even more progress. So I think those are some really encouraging numbers that we have. And then Renee will go over her results.
Yep. And just like Elizabeth was saying, again, this is a snapshot, but we've got 34 facilities that are including patients in QAPI throughout our network. And then 9 facilities in this cohort included at least one patient in at least one QAPI meeting. And then 51 facilities doing self-directed goals on the care plan for the patient. And then 17 in cohort 2 included at least one patient self-directed goal in a care plan document, and 13 certified peer mentors. 11 facilities in cohort 2 referred at least one patient for training or pairing. So very remarkable work. Thank you all.
Awesome. A couple more polls. I think these are our last. I think we have 3 polls left. Did you hear a best practice today that you had not considered before? Let me launch that. Okay, 30 seconds. All right, it looks like the votes have stopped coming in. Okay, so what we got here? 80% say yes, that you heard something that you had not heard before, which is really encouraging for us. So that's awesome. All right, we're getting down to the wire here. We've got 10 minutes. Let me flip to the next one. Do you see yourself implementing any of these best practices at your facility? 30 seconds. All right, looks like it stopped. Okay, so everyone said yes, at least one, some of you more than one. All righty. Okay, so I'm going to give a few shout outs to some of the hospitalization facilities here. Had a lot of facilities. I could not include anyone, but wanted to highlight these here. So Greater Southeast Community Dialysis, DaVita Brentwood, BMA Wheaton, RAI Chilham Hyattsville, FKC Merit of Dundalk, and Tidewater and FMC Louisa. They all reduced their admission rate from September to December. These facilities, Greater Southeast Community Dialysis, Lee Dialysis Center, FMC Louisa, DaVita Lee Street, Golden Mile, and FKC Smith County, all decreased their ER visit rate. So I wanted to shout them out, and they all had one-to-one calls with me and submitted strategic plans and that we discussed and went over. So I wanted to give them a shout out. Again, this is not everyone. There was a lot of facilities that decreased their rate, but just specifically highlighting these. Also wanted to give a big shout out to these facilities here because they've had 0 COVID admissions, which please help us, show us your ways. So it doesn't mean that they didn't have COVID infections. They all probably had at least one COVID infection, but they were able to keep these patients out of the hospital for COVID. So DaVita Lee Street, IDF Calver, Oxon Hill, Chilham Hyattsville, BMA Blue Ridge, Lee Dialysis Center, Total Renal Care Chestertown, FKC Halifax, DaVita Wood County, FMC Dundalk, BMA Southwest Virginia, Total Renal Care Hopewell, BMA Garrisonville, Charlottesville North, RAI South Church Smithfield, Oceana, FKC, Indian River, and UVA Page still have 0 COVID admissions. Knock on wood, that's amazing. Please share anything that you can. All right, Elizabeth.
Yes. So for home dialysis, we wanted to highlight the facilities. DaVita Berlin, and I'm pulling up my own notes here. They increased to 14 patients that transitioned to home. Fresenius Garrisonville increased from 0 before cohort 2 to 3 patients in December. And then Lansdowne increased direct to home rates with a really creative way. They were having some trouble with crowding in their in-center unit, and they talked to their nephrologist about considering some direct to home patients. And that has been a really great thing for them. With transplants, we'd like to highlight Fresenius Merritt Boulevard of Dundalk, who added 4 patients to the wait list during the project. FMC Elkton, who added 2 patients, and then BMA Beckley. To echo Caitlin, these are just a few of the facilities. We had many that had lots of progress, and we're really encouraged by that.
And same here with the patient family engagement stuff. There were way too many facilities making progress in at least one of these areas that could not fit on the slide. So I narrowed it down to the facilities that were making progress in more than one area. And IDF Chestnut Square has had a patient, at least one patient in at least 4 months of QAPI meetings, same with Life Plan. DaVita Golden Mile has really been doing QAPI for most of the year, so that's great. And also got a peer mentor referral. And then UVA Amherst doing the Life Plan, and then also made a referral for peer mentoring. And then UVA Farmville touched on all 3 areas. 4 months with a patient in QAPI, working on the Life Plan, and peer mentor referral. So congratulations and thank you all.
Awesome. Okay, this is our last poll, and let me elaborate on this a little bit here. So the question is, are you interested in having a meeting with the network and a high-performing facility? So this would be kind of like a high-performing facility. Maybe they're performing really well in moving patients to home, and you're interested in having a one-on-one discussion with them and the network kind of as a moderator on how they did that. This would be within your organization. So it would be Fresenius hooking up with the Fresenius, a DaVita with DaVita, and so on. So is this something that you would be interested in doing in any area that you need improvement on? This could also include vaccinations. This could include depression. This could involve any of the projects. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that poll. Okay. Most saying no. A lot of people want more information on this, and we do have 8 facilities that say yes. So we will go back and look at the polling results, look and see which facilities we have there, and we'll definitely reach out to you about that, and we can get that process going and give you more information about it. Okay, so want to give everyone, we have a few more minutes left, want to give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, share anything specific that's on your mind. We also have Amanda Morelli on this call as well. So if you have any specific vaccination questions, we're happy to answer those as well. You can come off mute or put anything in the chat. Okay, how do we report to you about what we are doing with patient-directed goals? Renee, I believe that one is for you.
Yep. Yeah, so QAPI, you would report that any month that you do have a patient attend a meeting on the website where we have the ongoing projects tab under the patient engagement portion of that. There's all 3 of those projects are there. The QAPI reporting mechanism, there's a link there, and you would just check yes. You'd identify your facility. Yes, we had a patient attend, and then check the areas that you spoke on. The life planning, let me know when you believe you've had a patient self-directed goal put on a care plan. Just contact me. Don't give me any patient information. Just contact me and I'll reach out to you from there. For the peer mentoring, it's the referral form. So when you send that application in, indicating it indicates whether it's for a peer mentor or a mentee. That's my trigger. That's how you get credit for that.
Thank you, Renee. A couple more questions. Where can I find this recording? Once we end this call, I will work on getting the recording uploaded to our YouTube channel, and then I'll distribute that out later this week. And I'll also share the slides with everyone as well. Please share with your facility and get this information out there as much as possible. And then another question from Angela Washington, what are the regulations related to self-care in the unit? And I believe you're asking in terms of patients doing things for themselves while they're in dialysis, and in a way to get them to move towards home and understand that process. Elizabeth, do you have any thoughts to share on that?
I can send some resources out to you specifically or to all of the cohort that we had seen recently. Hopefully, Angela, let us know if that answers your question or not.
I think I can speak to it. This is Renee. So there are no federal regulations per se that specifically talk about self-care rules, but the states have rules about that. And for the most part, self-care can be done in any unit, but the patients have to be trained by a self-care certified person. So somebody from the home department has to train the patient to do self-care in the unit. But you can check with your state surveyor agency. We can help you with that if you're not sure who that is.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions that we can answer? Okay, well, as always, you can email us or call us if you think of anything, if you need anything, if you need any resources. I have our contact information here. Again, I did record this call and I will work on getting that distributed to you all, and we'll also share the slides. Thank you all again for listening to us and sharing what you've been doing and sending in your strategic plans and doing the one-to-ones. We really appreciate all the participation. Thank you for the work that you're doing with the patients. It's evident what you're doing in the data that we've received and how we can see the improvements. And these numbers just in this very short time period that we've been communicating with you all and working with you all. So thank you. Please enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.